One night, my husband, clearly intoxicated, came home and woke me by shouting at me. He called me a poor wife and slapped me hard across the face, declaring that he had won a $5 million lottery and intended to live a luxurious life without me. He then ordered me to leave the house, but he was unaware of what would happen in the next few hours. My name is Sarah, and I'm a kindergarten teacher living on the outskirts of Seattle. I'm in my early 30s, and for the past 6 years, I've been married to Mike. When I first met him, I thought he was charming and ambitious. He worked hard, and I admired his dedication. But over time, things began to change in ways I never expected. At first, our marriage felt like a dream. We had the kind of love that made me believe we could conquer the world together. Mike often praised my work, saying that teaching was a noble profession, and I felt proud to be shaping young minds. But as the months turned into years, his admiration faded, replaced by a growing obsession with money and success. About 6 months ago, I started noticing a shift in Mike's behavior. He became distant and rude, often belittling my job. "You're just playing with kids all day," he would say, rolling his eyes. "It's not real work." His words stung more than I could express, especially since we were earning almost the same salary. I tried to brush it off, convincing myself that he was just stressed from work, but deep down I knew something was wrong. We had always talked about having children, but Mike began to shut down that conversation, claiming that kids were a financial burden. "We can barely pay the mortgage as it is, Sarah," he would argue. "Don't even think about bringing a child into this mess." I felt my heart sink each time he dismissed my dreams. I loved children and wanted to share that love with my own, but with Mike's relentless negativity, it felt like an impossible dream. One particularly cold night, everything changed. I had been asleep for a few hours when I woke up to the sound of Mike shouting. The clock on the wall read 2 a.m. My heart raced as I tried to comprehend what was happening. He was standing in the living room, his face flushed, clearly intoxicated. "Wake up, Sarah. You need to hear this," he yelled, his words slurring together. I stumbled out of bed, still groggy from sleep. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice trembling slightly. "I don't want you as my wife anymore," he spat, anger radiating off him like heat from a fire. "You're just a poor wife who can't even contribute anything meaningful to this family. I've won $5 million in the lottery, and I'm leaving you to enjoy a luxurious life without you." I stood there, shocked and confused. My mind raced, struggling to process the words that were spilling from his mouth.
"What?"
"You won the lotteries," I managed to stammer. "Yeah. And you can't even imagine what I'm going to do with it," he continued, a cruel smile creeping onto his face. "I'm going to travel, buy a mansion, and live the life I deserve. You're just a weight I don't need anymore." My heart shattered as I took in his words. I had always supported him, always believed in us. And here he was, throwing it all away without a second thought. "Mike, please, let's talk about this. We can work things out," I pleaded, desperation creeping into my voice. But before I could say anything more, he took a step closer and slapped me hard across the face. The shock of it knocked me back, and I stumbled into the wall, pain exploding on my cheek. "Get out," he yelled, pointing toward the door. "You're not welcome here anymore." Tears filled my eyes as I realized the man I loved had become someone I barely recognized. In a haze of hurt and humiliation, I packed a small bag with my essentials, feeling a mix of anger and sorrow. This wasn't how I envisioned my life turning out. As I stepped out into the cold night, the weight of Mike's betrayal settled heavily on my shoulders. I didn't know where I was going, but I knew I couldn't stay there. I drove aimlessly, tears streaming down my face as I tried to wrap my mind around everything. I had lost my home, my husband, and the future I had dreamed of. My heart raced as I realized I needed a plan, a way to reclaim my life and turn the tables on the man who had mistreated me for so long. After a restless night in a cheap motel, I decided to reach out for help. I thought about my students, especially Tommy, a sweet 6-year-old boy in my class. His father, Mr. Thompson, was a successful lawyer. Maybe he could offer me some guidance. I swallowed my pride and called Mr. Thompson. "Hi, Mr. Thompson, it's Sarah. I hope you remember me." "Of course, Sarah. How can I help you?" he replied, his voice warm and inviting. I need some advice. I'm in a tough situation, and I don't know who else to turn to." "What happened?" he asked, concern evident in his tone. After sharing my story, I heard silence on the other end. "Sarah, I'm so sorry to hear this. You don't deserve to be treated that way. Let's meet and talk about how I can help you." His kindness brought me a small glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, I could find a way to turn this nightmare into a new beginning. I couldn't let Mike's actions define my future. With newfound determination, I prepared to fight back and reclaim my dignity, knowing I wouldn't be alone in this battle. The next few days were a blur of emotions. I met with Mr. Thompson, who introduced me to a skilled attorney and arranged for a private investigator to look into Mike's activities. The pieces of my life were beginning to come together, and I could finally see a way forward. But deep down, I knew I had a long road ahead of me. I had to confront Mike, and I wasn't sure how he would react. I felt a mix of anxiety and determination, ready to face whatever came next. The journey to reclaim my life had just begun, and I was ready to fight for my future. After my shocking confrontation with Mike, I felt an overwhelming mix of emotions: anger, fear, and a flicker of hope. With Mr. Thompson's support, I was determined to take charge of my life. I had begun to make plans to file for divorce, and I was ready to gather the evidence I needed to confront Mike properly. The next few weeks were a whirlwind of activity. I met with Mr. Thompson and his attorney, who explained the divorce process in detail. "You need to gather as much information as possible about Mike," Mr. Thompson advised. "If he's been lying about his job and spending time with someone else, we need proof." That's when I hired a private investigator named Lisa. She was sharp and professional, immediately putting me at ease. "I'll keep a close eye on Mike and find out what he's been up to," she assured me. "Don't worry, we'll get to the bottom of this." As I waited for updates, I focused on my job. I poured my heart into teaching, finding solace in the laughter and innocence of my students. Tommy, the little boy whose father was helping me, became my favorite student. He would often say, "Miss Sarah, you're the best teacher." Each time he said it, I felt a little more empowered. It reminded me why I had chosen this career in the first place. But Mike's shadow loomed large over my thoughts. I couldn't shake the fear of what he might do when he found out I was fighting back. One afternoon, while grading papers in my small apartment, I received a call from Lisa. "Sarah, I have some information for you," she said. My heart raced as I listened. "Mike has been lying about working late," she explained. "He hasn't been at the office most nights. In fact, he's been spotted frequently at a bar downtown with a woman." My stomach dropped at the realization that he had been unfaithful. "I've got photos and evidence," Lisa continued. "We can use this in court." My emotions swirled. Betrayal and anger mixed with a sense of relief that I finally had proof of his infidelity. I realized that I wasn't just fighting for my rights. I was reclaiming my dignity. That evening, I went home and looked through the photos Lisa had sent. There he was, laughing with another woman, looking carefree and happy. It struck me how easily he had moved on while I was left picking up the pieces of my shattered life. But I knew I had to remain strong. As I prepared for the divorce proceedings, I steeled myself for the confrontation with Mike. I remembered the slap, the humiliation, and the way he had belittled me. I would not allow him to push me around any longer. The day of the court hearing arrived, and my nerves were on edge. I arrived early, dressed in a professional outfit that made me feel powerful. I had always believed in the importance of presenting myself well, and today was no exception. I took a deep breath and walked into the courtroom, clutching my documents tightly. When Mike entered, I noticed the change in his demeanor. He seemed cocky, wearing a smirk as if he were still the one in control. But that didn't matter. I was ready to fight. The proceedings began, and I listened as Mike's attorney tried to paint me as an irresponsible wife. "Your Honor," he began, "my client was burdened by his wife's inability to contribute financially." I could feel my blood boiling, but I kept my composure. When it was my turn to speak, I stood tall. "Your Honor, I have evidence that my husband has been unfaithful and has lied about his commitment to our marriage, I said, my voice steady. I presented the photos and the testimony from Lisa. The look on Mike's face was priceless. His cocky demeanor faltered as the truth began to sink in. You think this is all a game, don't you? He spat, glaring at me. You think you can take everything from me? I'm not trying to take anything from you, Mike, I replied firmly. I'm just trying to reclaim my life and move on from this toxic relationship. As the judge listened to both sides, I felt a wave of relief wash over me. I was standing up for myself, and I could finally see a path toward freedom. After what felt like an eternity, the judge made a decision regarding the alimony and the mortgage. Mike, you will be responsible for paying alimony to Sarah, as well as continuing to cover the mortgage on your house until it is sold, the judge announced. I couldn't help but smile, a mix of triumph and liberation coursing through me. This was the moment I had fought for, the moment I knew I could move forward. As I left the courthouse, I felt lighter than I had in months. I realized I was not the helpless woman Mike had always painted me to be. I was strong, and I would reclaim my life one step at a time. Little did I know, however, that this was only the beginning. Mike's next move would be even more unpredictable, and I would need every ounce of strength and resilience to face what lay ahead. The fight for my freedom was far from over, but for the first time in a long while, I felt hopeful about my future. After the court ruling, I felt a flicker of hope ignite within me. I had stood up for myself, and it felt liberating. But deep down, I knew that Mike wouldn't just accept the decision. His ego was too fragile for that, and I braced myself for the fallout. The following weeks were tense. I focused on my work, trying to pour my energy into my students. Tommy was a bright spot in my day, always bringing joy and laughter into the classroom. One afternoon, as I helped him with a project, I noticed his cheerful demeanor had shifted. "Miss Sarah, are you okay?" he asked, concern etched on his little face. "I'm fine, Tommy. Just a little tired," I replied, forcing a smile. But the truth was, I was anxious. I knew Mike was still lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. One evening, I received a call from Mr. Thompson. "Sarah, I think we need to meet. I have some concerning news about Mike." My heart raced. What could he possibly be up to now? When I arrived at the coffee shop, Mr. Thompson looked serious. "I've been hearing from some of your colleagues that Mike has been spreading rumors about you, claiming that you're unstable and unfit to be around children," he explained. "Why would he do that?" I asked, disbelief washing over me. "He's trying to manipulate the narrative to make himself look like the victim. He knows he's on shaky ground after the court ruling and is desperate to gain sympathy," he replied. My stomach twisted at the thought. "He can't do that. I won't let him destroy my reputation." "Stay calm, Sarah. We'll gather evidence to counter his claims. I'll make sure to protect you," Mr. Thompson assured me, his determination calming my nerves. A few days later, I felt the weight of anxiety press down on me. I knew I had to confront Mike about these rumors. I couldn't let him tarnish my name without a fight. So, I decided to go to the bar where he often hung out, ready to face him. That evening, I walked into the dimly lit bar, my heart pounding. There he was, laughing with his friends, the picture of confidence. Taking a deep breath, I approached him. "Mike, we need to talk," I said firmly. He turned, a smirk on his face. "Look who it is. My little wife. Come to beg for mercy." "Stop it, Mike. I know what you're saying about me," I shot back, trying to keep my voice steady. "You can't just ruin my life because you're bitter." "Bitter? Please, Sarah. You're the one who wanted this divorce," he sneered, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "I wanted a life free from your lies and manipulation. You've been spreading rumors to make me look bad, and it stops now," I insisted, feeling a surge of anger. "Or what? You'll go crying to your lawyer," he laughed mockingly. "I'm not afraid of you, Mike," I said, my voice strong. "You've lost. I'm moving on with my life, and there's nothing you can do to change that." Just then, I noticed a few patrons looking over, curious about our confrontation. "You think you're better than me?" he spat, his expression darkening. "No, I just know I deserve better," I replied. "And I won't let you drag me down any longer." With that, I turned to leave, feeling a mix of relief and adrenaline. I had confronted him, and while he had tried to intimidate me, I stood my ground. As I walked away, I felt lighter, empowered by my resolve. But I knew Mike wasn't finished yet. The battle wasn't over. It was just heating up. Little did I know, his next move would push me to my limits and test my newfound strength in ways I had never anticipated. After my confrontation with Mike at the bar, I felt a sense of liberation wash over me. I had stood up to him, but deep down, I knew the real battle was far from over. Mike was unpredictable and desperate, and I had to be prepared for whatever he might try next. A few days later, I received a text from Mr. Thompson. "We need to meet. I have some urgent information." My heart raced. I feared the worst. When I arrived at the coffee shop, he was already waiting, looking even more serious than usual. "Sarah, I've been keeping an eye on Mike," he began. "He's been acting increasingly erratic. I received reports that he's been hanging around your workplace and trying to talk to your colleagues." "What? Why would he do that?" I asked, feeling a mix of anger and anxiety. "He's trying to intimidate you and discredit your teaching," Mr. Thompson explained. "We need to take this seriously." "I won't let him control my life anymore," I replied, my voice firm. "I'm ready to fight back. I can't let him win." The next week, I decided to take extra precautions. I spoke with my school principal about the situation. "I want to ensure my safety and my students' safety," I told her. To my relief, she was supportive and agreed to keep an eye on things. But then, just as I thought I was regaining control, Mike made his most aggressive move yet. One evening, while I was grading papers at home, I heard a loud bang at my door. My heart raced as I cautiously approached. Peering through the peephole, I saw Mike standing there, his expression wild. "Sarah, open up," he shouted, slamming his fist against the door. "We need to talk." Fear coursed through me, but I refused to let it paralyze me. "Go away, Mike. You're not welcome here," I shouted back, trying to sound confident. "I'll make you regret this, you know," he yelled, his voice filled with rage. "You think you can just walk away from me? I'll ruin you." My hands trembled as I dialed 911, hoping I wouldn't have to use it. "Please send someone to my address. My ex-husband is outside, and he's threatening me." The operator assured me help was on the way, and I took a deep breath, trying to stay calm. I knew I had to be strong, not just for myself, but for my students and for everyone who had supported me. Moments later, I heard sirens approaching. Mike must have realized the police were coming because he turned and fled. I felt a wave of relief wash over me, but I knew this wasn't the end. The next day, I met with Mr. Thompson to discuss what happened. "I'm glad you're okay," he said, concern etched on his face. "This is a serious situation. We need to file a restraining order against him." I nodded, understanding the importance of taking this step. I was done being afraid. With Mr. Thompson's help, we filed the paperwork, and I felt a renewed sense of empowerment. When the court date for the restraining order arrived, I walked in with my head held high. I was no longer the timid woman Mike had once belittled. I was a survivor. The judge listened to my account and granted the restraining order. Relief washed over me, and I knew I had finally taken a stand against Mike's intimidation tactics. As I left the courtroom, I felt lighter, free from the weight of his threats. I had fought for my dignity and my peace of mind, and I had emerged victorious. In the weeks that followed, I focused on my teaching and my students. Tommy continued to thrive in my class, and I found joy in every lesson I taught. I had learned that I was stronger than I ever realized, and with the support of those around me, I could overcome any challenge. As I closed this chapter of my life, I was filled with hope for the future. I knew that while the scars of the past would remain, they would not define me. I had reclaimed my life, and now I was ready to embrace whatever came next, ready to move forward with resilience and strength.